Greetings. Welcome back to the Osha Cerese Show. Why is that so small? Let's blow it up. Welcome back to the Osha Cerese Show. Again, welcome back to the Osha Cerese Show. I'm your host, Osha Cerese, and this is your weekday reset where culture meets coaching, where healing meets headlines, and where we utilize alchemy to transmute gossip into growth. So thank you all for tuning in. I appreciate you. If you are not already subscribed to my channel, please do that right now. YouTube is where this show lives. It is youtube.com/at Osha Cerese. The link is in my bio if you are watching on Instagram. I've been giving y'all a treat, keeping it on Instagram as well, but it really lives on YouTube. So sometimes I may not go live on both. So make sure you are subscribed to my channel. Not only subscribe, but also notify or turn your notifications on, because this is a pop-up show. So you never know what time I'm going to pop up. And you want to be present here while I'm live. So turn the notifications on. I got plenty of content on my channel that's already there, that is coming. And these episodes live under the live video section because these are live shows. So someone asked me the other day how to find old episodes. Go to my channel, go to the live tab, and all episodes are there. This is episode 34. I appreciate y'all for joining in. We're going strong. We did one show a day every day in the month of February, and in March and beyond, we are a weekday show. So thank you again for tuning in. I hope you had a wonderful weekend. I hope your Monday started out amazing. You had an amazing Monday. I don't know about y'all. I told y'all my sleep schedule was a little iffy. Like, I'm self-employed, been self-employed for 6 years now. So sometimes I might have a little side gig, a little gig where I go to, but right now I don't. It's all me right now. And I do have some gigs that I'm doing, but they don't require me to be in an office at a certain time to clock in. So my sleep schedule is what I make it. And I've always been a night owl. And I told y'all, like, my hibernation period is November to February. So November, December, and January, I'm usually just in my little hibernation zone, resetting, preparing for new opportunities and new ideas to come into fruition. And I'm on chill mode. And so I've been unthawing. But during that time, I'm usually like up all night, go to sleep early, and, just go from there. So I shifted my schedule back to a normal type of schedule at the end of January. But it's been kind of trying to lean back. So I don't know about y'all, if y'all spring, the daylight savings time, if it throws y'all off, but it kind of throws me off. So I'm a little confused about the time right now. Like, it's thrown me off, but it's okay. So we're here. I appreciate y'all. Welcome. Again, I'm Osha Cerese. I am a certified life coach, an event curator, and a dream doula, helping you to birth your ideas into reality. Cheers to episode 34. This is the drink of the evening. Don't judge me, because y'all know I was on my healthy drinks for February. I got a little root beer here. Somebody said root beer tastes like burgundy, and I agree. If ever you see me drink a soda, it's going to be Sprite or root beer, usually a root beer float. So the drink of the evening is root beer. Cheers to an amazing episode 34. Cheers to happiness, healthiness, safety, protection, bliss, joy, abundance, success, if I didn't say that already, wealth, and just a great life. So cheers to that, y'all. I can't sip, y'all. I can't sip soda. I gotta gulp it. So if I burp, excuse me. Still a lady. Shout out to Vigilante. He's tuned in. He says, let's go. All right, let's go. So, as you all know, it is March. It is Women's History Month. And I'm not just having the women of the past and of the, back in the day. I'm not just highlighting the back in the day people that paved the way, although I am going to be doing that as well. We've had Eartha Kitt. We've talked about Viola Davis. We've talked about some other ladies in history. I can't remember all who we spotlighted last week, but go watch the old episodes. But today we're going to spotlight a woman of today. I wanted to spotlight Simone Biles today. She is the most decorated gymnast of all time. And she was born March 14th, 1997. Her birthday's coming up. I didn't even know that. In Columbus, Ohio. She was raised in Spring, Texas, and adopted by her grandparents, who played a huge role in her upbringing. And they supported her passion for gymnastics. She started her gymnastics journey at just 6 years old after a daycare field trip to a gym, which sparked her interest. And by the time she was 14, she was competing at an elite level. And in 2013, she made her senior international debut. Again, she's the most decorated gymnast in history with a total of 32 Olympic and World Championship medals. She's known for her incredible power, precision, and groundbreaking skills that no other female gymnast has performed. Biles has been a vocal advocate for mental health, taking a stand during the 2020 Tokyo Olympics when she prioritized her well-being over competition, as she should. A bold and necessary move that sparked global conversations about athlete wellness. She's been married to her husband, who's an NFL player, Jonathan Owens. He's a safety for the Green Bay Packers. They met on a dating app, actually, in 2020. And they fell in love pretty quickly. They've been inseparable ever since. They got engaged February 2022, and they tied the knot April of 2023. So they've had a little controversy in their relationship based on some of the things that he said publicly. But overall, I think they're a cute couple, and I wish them success in their relationship. So we're going to be talking about some things today, y'all. I wanted to look one thing up. Hold on. I wanted to figure out the name of the app that it was called Raya. The dating app that they met on is more so like for celebrities and certain elite people, but they definitely did meet on a dating app. So, we'll talk more about that in a minute because I'm going to refer back to that. So Vigilante says, shout out to all out African queens who used to rule whole kingdoms. Absolutely. All right. So Vigilante, I made sure that he was present today. Well, I invited him to be present because I asked people who, are on my Instagram and follow me on social media what type of topics they wanted me to discuss this week. And he did submit a topic. So I wanted to let him know that I will be talking about that today. It's one of the things I'll be talking about. So he basically asked, let me get his words and read them verbatim. If I can find it. Let's see. Okay. So Vigilante said, why is every woman just getting out of a relationship with a narcissist? And if y'all don't know, me and Vigilante actually streamed on his channel for not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5, not 6, not 7, not 8, not 9, but almost 10 hours. It was an invitation to come just do a podcast. I was thinking maybe 30 minutes, an hour, maybe 2 hours. But we ended up streaming for 10 hours. And I do think we touched on this topic a little bit. Maybe it was private conversation before we really got to the stream. But Yeah, that's a good question. Why is it that every woman seems to be just getting out of a relationship with a narcissist? So when we look at the statistics, they say that there aren't that many actual diagnosed narcissistic men or people out there. The narcissistic personality disorder is not as common as we would think based on how everyone seemingly has been with a narcissist. Um, the number changes so much as far as the statistics based on my own research. So I'll let y'all look that up, but it's a very, very small percentage. It's not as much as you would think it is based on how many people have used the term narcissist. So I definitely think that I have a couple of opinions about this topic. So when it comes to every woman just breaking up with a narcissist, I'm not going to invalidate a woman's experience as to what she has dealt with a particular man that makes her feel like she wants to label it that experience. But I'm also not going to overlook the fact that that is a big accusation to basically diagnose someone with such a personality disorder if it's not actually what they have going on. So we did talk about narcissism and some of the narcissistic traits last week. I talked about there was a little bit of drama. The millennial tour is back on the road. Shout out to my little cousin Zakia_3. She is on tour with them too as a promo model. She just got back home from a weekend of traveling with the tour. But right before the tour, there's always a little bit of drama going on, and it's usually between Bow Wow and Omarion for some reason. So I did talk about narcissism last week and how Omarion is like the king of being unbothered. Everybody labels him as Mr. Unbothered. He's self-proclaimed unbothered. He has a book called Unbothered. But some of the people that have been around him have somewhat labeled him as a narcissist. So I talked about some of the traits of narcissism that kind of align with his behavior. And, again, I'm not saying that he is a narcissist, but I'm saying that a lot of the things that we were putting the pieces of the puzzle together of seem like it can align with narcissistic traits. So I do believe that women who have experienced certain things with men, they have been able to pinpoint these characteristics as aligning with the characteristics of a narcissistic person, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they have that diagnosis. So I do feel like it is a buzzword. I don't know when it happened. I think it was like late 2010s, like maybe after 2016, where all of a sudden we start hearing a lot about narcissists. I've definitely done a few shows about narcissism, narcissists, signs of, being gaslit, all of these different things. I've done the shows before. And I think that I don't know how it became a buzzword. I don't know where it came from, where somebody labels someone as a narcissist, and all of a sudden every person that exhibits these characteristics are narcissists. But I definitely do think it's a buzzword. But when you understand narcissism, I'm going to say narcissistic traits. Narcissistic personality disorder is characterized by certain traits, but it's also other things that go along with it. So like grandiosity, an exaggerated sense of self-importance. We have seen certain men exhibit, and I'm not speaking on this as if women can't be narcissistic, but I'm just talking about the question was posed, why does it seem like women are all getting out of relationships with narcissists? So, or it seems like, every time you meet a woman, they're like, oh yeah, my ex was a narcissist, basically. Grandiosity, someone with this heightened sense of self-importance. Now, my ex, y'all know I always have a story time. His therapist, when he went to go see the lady when we were going through our situation, our breakup, she said that he had a God complex. So he did exhibit grandiosity, of course. Need for admiration. Now, there's a thin line between this. The constant craving for attention and validation. There's a thin line between a man who appreciates words of affirmation, his woman recognizing him, giving him compliments, telling him he's encouraging him, being vocal about how she feels about him. There's a complete difference than someone who's exhibiting this need for admiration in a way that is, what's the word? Doing, having attention-seeking behaviors that are unhealthy. Vigilante said, "Was your ex wealthy?" He was not. He did all right for himself, but I wouldn't say he was wealthy. No, he probably had more money before and after we were together, because there were certain things that I wasn't cool with him being involved with in order to get money. So he probably had some money around the time he was going to see the lady. Lack of empathy, difficulty understanding or caring about others' feelings. So you get with a man and maybe they're nonchalant, or maybe they don't express themselves the same way as other men, or maybe they are not used to bonding or closeness or connection the same way that you may be used to it. Maybe they have a different type of attachment style. So it might not be that they lack empathy. It might be that they don't express empathy in the same way. So there's a complete difference between someone who just has a certain type of personality or attachment style than a person that is just like dead in the eyes, has no feelings, cold-hearted, couldn't care less about what anybody else is going through or how anyone else feels. Manipulation, using charm or deceit to control others. So many women have experienced manipulative men. Because you get manipulated doesn't necessarily mean that you're dealing with somebody that is a narcissist. It might be just an asshole. It might just be somebody who's charming, has a lot of charisma. It might just be somebody who is used to getting their way and they know how to get it by any means necessary. Vigilante says there's only been 1% of wealth for both our lifespans. I'm concerned with how lack of financial abundance is not a red flag. Right. It definitely, yeah, we'll get back to that. Sense of entitlement, believing that they deserve special treatment. So again, that might not be a narcissist. It might be based on his birth order. Maybe he was the baby and he's used to being spoiled and used to getting his way, and that's how he operates. He feels entitled. Maybe he was the oldest son and he was praised, and the oldest grandson, the first grandson, and he's always been treated like a king. You never know. It might not be just a sense of entitlement, believing that, everyone else is peasants and I deserve this special treatment because he's a narcissist. Arrogance, acting superior to others. Some people take confidence a little bit too damn far, and it goes over into arrogance. That feeling of superiority. And again, that doesn't necessarily mean that this person is a narcissist. And exploitation, taking advantage of people for personal gain. We see that all the time. So again, I think that it has become a buzzword. A lot of people use it because it's trendy without necessarily understanding the clinical meaning and what all is required in order to diagnose someone as being a narcissist. Sometimes it could be just projecting and mislabeling somebody because that's your natural reaction to, oh, you're a narcissist. Like, it could just be, again, certain toxic behaviors or selfish ways that this person have mistakenly labeled as narcissism. And of course, you know, there's a lot that goes into all of these things, but this is what I want to say. Vigilante says a manipulator needs a willing participant to be a victim. A woman institute. Oh, I'm sorry. I can't read these days. A woman intuition is woman intuition. Let me rewind. A manipulator needs a willing participant to be a victim. Is women intuition and decrement was real? How could that happen? So we've talked about this before. I don't necessarily believe that a manipulator needs a willing participant to be a victim, as far as like, if you're saying that someone has to, what do you mean by they have to be a willing participant? Meaning they have to accept what it is that the person is offering them, suggesting, or trying to persuade them to do. Yes. Are they not a victim if someone can persuade you to do something that you're not comfortable with, or that you're not willing to do, or that you don't want to do. And I don't think that that necessarily means that you're willing just because you accept it, because some people just don't know. Some people allow themselves to get their minds twisted up or whatever. And as far as women's intuition, women have intuition. Everybody has intuition, but I believe women have it maybe a little bit stronger. It comes from our womb. It comes from our spirit. It's there. But a lot of women ignore their intuition, or they get into a position where they're confused on whether or not it's their intuition or it's anxiety. And having discernment is helpful to be able to determine which one you're actually experiencing. So what I wanted to talk about is, because narcissism has become a buzzword. When I was leaving, I want to say when I left, but when I was leaving the abusive relationship that I was in, I started doing a lot of research to help me with my healing process, to help me understand certain things, because I made a lot of excuses, and I knew that what I was experiencing wasn't right, but I didn't have the strength or the confidence or whatever it is that I needed in order to get out of the abusive relationship. Once I started going to therapy, I started getting a little bit more strength, a little bit more education on certain things. I don't even think that my therapist recommended this book. I think I did my own research to discover this book. And this is the book that I recommend for any woman I recommend any woman who is of dating age to read this book, especially if you have been in an abusive relationship, or you're not sure how to recognize the certain signs. And this book is called Why Does He Do That? Inside the Minds of Angry and Controlling Men by Lundy Bancroft. So when I read this book, it was a while ago. It was over, what's this, 2025? So it was probably over 13 years ago. I don't remember seeing the word narcissist. Now, I could be wrong, because it's not that I was looking for it, because that word wasn't very popular back then, that term. I was in nursing school. You know, we had to go through a mental health. We had to learn about mental health. We had to do a mental health rotation, doing clinicals and all of that. I don't necessarily remember narcissism coming up. But again, I just don't remember it. But now it's a very popular word. So I wanted to bring up this book because a lot of times we need to stop calling every man a narcissist and just call them out specifically for what they're doing or what it is that you experience. And most of it is some form of abuse. So if you recognize what abuse looks like and what type of different forms of abuse there are out there, then you can just pretty much label it as what it is versus blanketing all of it under narcissism. So I wanted to read some of the things out of this book just to shine light on different types of abuse, different types of abusive men, and what that looks like in relationships. Vigilante says Jennifer Lopez did a masterclass in the movie Enough When to Leave and How to Leave an Abusive Relationship. Yes, that was. I just recently watched Enough again. I watched it back in the day, but I watched it again. And that doesn't have to be everybody's story because everybody is not dealing with an abusive man like that specific man. That specific man would have gone to the lengths of unaliving her. And he was very powerful. He had money, he had privilege, he had connection. So her having to move to different states, her having to change her identity, change her child's name, be cautious of what schools she let her go to, make sure she knows not to talk to strangers, not to get too far away, having to learn self-defense and learn how to unalive him if the time called for that. That's not everybody's story and that's not everybody's path that they have to take, but it definitely happens out there when you do get somebody that's that much of a fool and that has that much access. For sure, you do have to equip yourself, and it's good for women to have to know self-defense anyway. And anytime you are, one thing I will say that's blanketed across the board when it comes to leaving abusive relationships that she did in the movie is to have a support system that you can trust and have money that you can access and have a plan. So I will say that. So let's talk about these different types of abusive men, because some folks just don't recognize what is what. All right. I'm not going to read the whole book to y'all, but a lot of this needs to be said. So this starts off with some of the quotes that women who have been abused. And just to give a little background on this man that wrote this book is a therapist who specifically worked with abusive men. So some of the quotes that women say when they have been abused: I feel so bad for him. He's had a really hard life. I'm lucky to be with him. He could get any woman he wants. I'm really scared of what he may do to me someday. I shouldn't argue with him because I just come out feeling like an idiot. He's very sensitive. I shouldn't complain so much. He's doing the best he can. He says the reason he cheats on me so much is because he's a sex addict. So it starts off by saying the qualities that make up an abusive man are like the ingredients in a recipe. The basics are always present, but the relative amounts vary greatly. One man may be so severely controlling that his partner can't make a move without checking with him first, and yet oddly, he contributes sustainably or substantially to the domestic work and childcare. Another man may allow his partner to come and go as she pleases, even accepting her friendships with men, but there is hell to pay if she fails to wait on him hand and foot, or if she makes the mistake of asking him to clean up after himself. Still, abusers are less overtly controlling and entitled than either of these men, but mind twisting in the severity of their manipulations. So he labels and categorizes the different types of abusive men. I'm gonna read the title and I'll read a couple of characteristics of them. So the demand man. He is highly entitled. We just talked about entitlement. He expects his partner's life to revolve around meeting his needs and is angry and blaming if anything gets in the way. He becomes enraged if he isn't catered to or if he is inconvenienced in even a minor way. The partner of this man comes to feel that nothing she does is ever good enough and that it is impossible to make him happy. Flashbacks. He criticizes her frequently, usually about things that he thinks she should have done or done better for him. Okay. Then we have Mr. Right. He considers himself the ultimate authority on every subject under the sun. You might call him Mr. Always Right. He speaks with absolute certainty, brushing your opinions aside like annoying gnats. He seems to see the world as a huge classroom in which he is the teacher and you are his student. He finds little of value in your thoughts or insights, so he seeks to empty out your head and fill it up with his jewels and of brilliance. When Mr. Wright sits in one of his groups, the therapist for abusive men, he often speaks of his partner as if she were in danger from her own idiocy and he needs to save her from herself. Mr. Wright has difficulty speaking to his partner or about her without a ring of hold up now. Condescension. I can't read, y'all. Oh, Lord. Condescension in his voice. And in conflict, his arrogance gets even worse. I've been having tongue twisters all week. Last week, I couldn't read either. The water torturer. The water torturer style proves that anger doesn't cause abuse. He can assault his partner psychologically without even raising his voice. He tends to stay calm in arguments, using his own evenness as a weapon to push her over the edge, which is why some people feel like I've experienced this with men and women where they feel like just because they don't raise their voice that they're not being condescending or being an asshole, pretty much. So he often has a superior or contemptuous grin on his face, smug and self-assured. He uses a repertoire of aggressive conversational tactics at low volume, including sarcasm, and he also does things like openly laughing at her, mimicking her voice, and cruel, cutting remarks. Like Mr. Wright, he tends to take things she has said and twist them beyond recognition to make her appear absurd, perhaps especially in front of other people. He gets to his partner through a slow but steady stream of low-level emotional assaults and perhaps occasionally shoves or other minor acts of violence that don't generally cause visible injury but may do psychological harm. He is relentless in his quiet derision and meanness. So if you notice what he described there when it comes to twisting the words beyond recognition to make her appear absurd is gaslighting. But he didn't use the term gaslighting, but that is another buzzword along with narcissism that we talk about often now that's always been around, but maybe not have been often labeled as that, or maybe those terms weren't placed in this book so that people can understand it in real talk. Vigilante says the same strength that you use to ignore all your friends and family to be with someone you're not supposed to be with, use that same strength to leave. I think that if you've never been in an abusive relationship or never been abused, sometimes it's best not to assume that it is as easy as you think it is, because it's not. So it's okay to have opinions, but understanding that sometimes things that you haven't necessarily experienced, it may seem so easily done from the outside looking in. But I don't ever want to shame anybody that has a hard time with leaving an abusive relationship, because there are so many reasons why women stay. Most of them are due to fear. Some of them are not due to lack of self-worth or lack of understanding that they're being abused and it's not right. Some people's literal lives are in danger and they don't have access to resources or a village or support or a way out. So they have to figure out how to do what they need to do. What was the first sentence that I missed? Because it says the same strength that you use to ignore all your friends and family to be with someone you're not supposed to be with, use that same strength to leave. Is there another sentence? I don't see any other. So Another category is the drill sergeant. He takes controlling behavior to its extreme, running his partner's life in every way that he can. He criticizes her clothing. He tells her whether she can go out or not. He interferes with her work. He wants her to have no one close to her, so he ruins her relationships with friends and relatives, or simply forbids her to see them. He may listen to her phone calls or read her mail or require the children to report on her activities anytime he is away. If she isn't home by his appointed curfew at night, she is at risk for abuse. She feels like a little girl living with a tyrannical. I can't read these type of words. They're not in my vocabulary. I know what he's saying, like a tyrant. Uh, father with no more freedom than an 8-year-old would have. So again, just like you just said, the same strength that she used to ignore her friends and all her friends and family. Oftentimes, women in abusive relationships have been isolated from their friends and family. So even though, and there are manipulative and brainwashing techniques that can go on in these relationships that have you feeling like your family members and friends don't mean you any good, that they are your ops, that they are your enemy, that this person is who you have and knows what's best for you, so they isolate you. So the voice that you're hearing in your head is this abuser and not necessarily the people that love you, like your friends and family. So it's not saying that that's the only reason why people are not listening to their friends and family. Some people, you just can't tell them nothing. But there are most cases, I won't say most because I don't have the statistics in front of me, but in many cases of abuse, you're being isolated and turned against your own family. Mr. Sensitive. He appears to be the diametric opposite of the drill sergeant. He is soft-spoken, gentle, and supportive when he isn't being abusive. He loves the language of feelings, openly shares his insecurities, his fears, and his emotional injuries. He hugs other men. He may speak out about the absurdity of war or the need for men to get in touch with their feminine side. Perhaps he attends a men's group or goes on men's retreats. Often he has participated extensively in therapy or 12-step programs or reads all the big self-help books. So he speaks the language of popular psychology and introspection. His vocabulary is sprinkled with jargon like developing closeness, working out our issues, and facing up to the hard things about myself. He presents himself to women as an ally in the struggle against sex role limitations. To some women, he seems like a dream come true. So what's wrong with this picture? Nothing obvious yet, but this is exactly the problem. Mr. Sensitive wraps himself in one of the most persuasive covers a man can have. If you start to feel chronically mistreated by him, you are likely to assume that something is wrong with you. And if you complain about him to other people, they may think you must be spoiled. You have the new age man. What more do you want? So this is interesting because this kind of reminded me of, we talked last week about the singer Mario, and he was interviewed on Shan Booty's podcast, Lovers by Shan. And he explains how he would how he would persuade women to unlock a certain level of intimacy with him by, for one, he has a way with words. He's a songwriter. He's a singer. So he was able to say the right words to them. So, like I said, women, my dad always says, men like what they see, women like what they hear. So if you can get into a woman's head with your words and get her feeling like she's the one, you're all in love, you saying certain things, it doesn't even necessarily have to be seductive. It could just be powerful, confident words that you are pouring into her, getting in her head. And I used the example when I talked about this on, that's interesting that I just looked at my computer and I see Mario's Instagram right there. That is very interesting. I don't know why that's up there. It's like a suggested page, and it's number one. He must have heard I've been talking about him because I wrote about him on Threads too. But anyway, um, I use the example of like people don't understand how a woman can sell her body or do certain things and then bring the money back to a pimp. And it all boils down to being able to use those tactics to be able to get in her head, get in her mind. They have a gift for gab. They have a certain way of persuasion, and it's it's definitely possible. You see it every day. So Mario also mentioned that he would allow himself to be vulnerable and allow himself to share certain aspects of his traumas or whatever it is that he's feeling deep inside to allow the woman to feel comfortable enough to let her guard down. But the kicker was that he wasn't necessarily attached to those emotions or past trauma. So it really wasn't nothing for him to talk about. But for a woman, she's sharing her deepest, darkest, intimate details and things that she holds to herself and feeling like, oh, we're bonding. Meanwhile, he's just playing. He also talked about, he called himself a self-proclaimed mystic. So he knows how to connect with a woman on a spiritual level. He knows how to utilize alchemy and nature and all these things and whatever else type of magic with a K that he's into in order to get um, women to unlock a certain level of intimacy with them. And he did mention how he healed his feminine. And so that just reminded me of this when it says, you know, the men that are in touch with their feminine side. And that's why I always say that women, we have to be careful in general, but like when it comes to spiritual men, some people call them hoteps. Some people call them, you know, just, uh, there's so many different labels. I don't want to call out certain practices, but there's certain types of men that have a certain set of skills. And there's also, I like to call them the love and light men who are always smiling and they're talking real low and they're super zen and they're grounded and they meditate and they on shrooms and they in the clouds and they're just so, you know, in touch with their feminine energy. And a part of that is so beautiful. Like, I think there are some beautiful men who are in tune with nature and grounded and they are spiritual and they are balanced and all of that. But some of them utilize that persona and that archetype to reel you in to make them think that they are Mr. Sensitive and they are a whole ass fool. Or they are utilizing that type of energy and personality to manipulate you. I actually experienced this not as a romantic relationship, but in business. A couple years ago, this love and light type dude, I don't know how we connected. I don't remember how we connected, but I think it was some on Facebook or something. And he reached out to me. Somehow we connected. I don't remember how the initial connection was, but eventually he asked for my number because he had an opportunity for me. So he contacted me and he said that he wanted to um, have me come speak to a group of women that he was working with. So he was calling himself a healer and he's helping women get through certain aspects of their life and all of these things. Um, so he I made the mistake. I wasn't on my business P's and Q's by agreeing to, I think he hired me for six classes to teach six classes. And the arrangement was supposed to be I teach two, he pays me half of my payment, and then after the rest of the sessions, then he pays me again. So that's not a good business deal. I'm not blaming him for scamming me because it was my fault for accepting this. But he had such this energy. It wasn't the energy because I could read energy well. He had this persona of just the smile and the, you know, we doing this. And he was talking and it was aligning with some of the things that I wanted to do. So when I got on the calls, he had the group of women. They were all excited about this. and he's, labeling himself self-proclaimed healer, got all these different programs that he's putting these women through. And then he started talking that hoopla on the phone call, and I knew my antennas started going up. He started talking about how if every woman completed these 6 sessions and this program that he had attached to these sessions or whatever, it wasn't just the 6 sessions that I was doing. It was some other things that they had to do. It was a full program. He was saying that he was gonna buy everybody a house. It was just like, I'm like, what is this man talking about? But I'm like, whatever. I don't know. Who knows? Maybe he got it like that. So then when I was leading the sessions, he was staying online, but he was muting himself. So he wasn't really present, active in the sessions, but he was present. This was virtual. And I'm holding space for these women. They're talking about their deep traumas that they've been through, being, abused in every way you can think of. And they're really here looking for healing and looking for community and looking for support on their journey. And after the 2 classes that I taught, he and I had a meeting, and all of a sudden the arrangement changed. He's like, well, you kind of, he basically was saying that he didn't want me to do as much as I was doing because women were having breakthroughs in my sessions. And I think he wanted to be the one to initiate the breakthroughs. And he thought that I was just going to come and like give a little fluff presentation or something, even though I kind of shared with him some of the things that I would be talking about. So he didn't really like the way that women were actually having breakthroughs with me. And then he switched it up and started saying that, oh yeah, I know we said that I was going to pay you after the first 2. I got to talk to my bank. I got to talk to my team, all of this different things. So at that point, all this light and love shit, I don't want to hear about it. So when we got on the phone to talk about what was going on, what was the update before I scheduled the 3rd session, he was on some, yeah, everything is aligning exactly how it's supposed to, and da-da-da. Like, sir, you cannot love and light me and smile me into knowing that you're scamming me. At this point, if you got away with it for these past 2 sessions, but I can only imagine how this man is with women in his life that he is romantically trying to pursue, because how dare you be a whole fraud and creating supposedly safe spaces for women to heal. That is not something that should be done lightly. That shouldn't be, play. And it's not just men that are doing it. It's women who are they're promoting that they have these safe spaces and these safe havens and these communities and sisterhood and all of this. And they're not really about that life. They don't really care about women. They don't really want to hold space for people and support them on their journey. It's just a money grab or some type of, manipulation going on with that too. So I say beware. Like, don't let the smiles fool you. Don't let the charms fool you. Don't let the Zen voices fool you. It's amazing for a man to be able to balance his masculine and feminine energies in a way that presents, to just be balanced and to be healthy, because somebody that is just always masculine. Sometimes men get it twisted that masculinity means like macho, alpha, yelling, rough, woo, woo, woo. And feminine energy is zesty, which is not. There are certain aspects of you that you can lean into your feminine energy when it comes to nurturing your children or your woman, being supportive, receiving, allowing yourself to be nurtured and taken care of sometimes. Sensuality, all type of ways where a man can lean into their feminine energy, and that doesn't mean that they're feminine, but utilizing that concept to make a woman feel safe, as if you're an ally or you get it or you can relate or you're welcoming her energy when really you ain't about that life, is crazy to me. Vigilante said, it reminds me a lot of the Bible when God told Adam and Eve not to do something, and we know who did what. Even with the perfect life, she invented sin. We never held her accountable either. Actually, if you go to your Bible, you will see that God told Adam. Sounds like he's related to Ace Metaphor. I don't know. The player. So the player is usually good looking and often sexy. They're dangerous. But sometimes he just thinks he is. I know some of them too. In the early part of a relationship, he seems head over heels in love and wants to spend as much time as possible in bed together. He is a pretty good lover. You may feel lucky that you have caught someone who knows how to turn you on and feel proud to be seen with him. Your self opinion gets a nice boost. After a while, though, a few things start to bother you. You notice that apart from sex, his interest in you is waning, and even his sexual energy is dropping off a little. He seems to lock his eyes pretty hard onto women that walk by. He flirts with waitresses, clerks, or even friends of yours. Sexual undertones seem to run through most of his interactions with females, except for ones he finds completely unattractive. Rumor starts to come back to you that he's been seen with this woman, that he is sleeping with that one, that he is pursuing another one, but she isn't interested yet. At first, you discount these rumors as hurtful gossip, but after a while, you start to wonder. The player often starts to stall on moving in together or agreeing to be exclusive, even though earlier he couldn't wait to get serious. He's he may say that he's been hurt or has a fear of commitment. I'm just not ready. But the real issue is that he doesn't want restrictions on his freedom. Much of his satisfaction in life comes from exploiting women and feeling like a sexual animal. Women around the player seem to get angry at each other a lot rather than at him, and sometimes get into physical confrontations. These tensions work out well for him, diverting attention from his infidelity and dishonesty. He sets up this dynamic with some combination of the following tactics. He knows how to make each woman feel like she's the special one and yet at the same time keep her off balance so that she never feels quite sure of where she stands with him. He tells each one that the others are lying about their involvements with him because they are jealous of her, or because he's turned them down, or because he used to be involved with them but isn't anymore. He tells one stories about how other women have mistreated him, or shares other bits of information largely invented to make previous or current women in his life sound conniving, vindictive, or addicted to substances. He breaks up with women and gets back together with them so that no one can keep track of what's going on. He includes one or two women in his cycle who feel unattractive because he knows he can have more power over them and manipulates them into hating the women who are seen as more attractive. So, something that he mentioned in this description of the player is what we now call love bombing. When you're all into the woman at first and showering her with love and sex and affection and all of this attention, and then all of a sudden you're distant or you are not giving her the same energy. So again, he doesn't use the term love bomb, but it's described here. So we're seeing now that these buzzwords that are now popular on the internet, they exist, they've always existed, but now we're seeing them being described in a book. I don't know when this book came out. When did this book come out? This book, let's see if I have the copyright on here. (2002). So this book came out in 2002, 23 years ago. We weren't using narcissist as much, gaslight, love bomb, but it's here. It's described here. And I talked about that before too, as far as like the women, women will get mad at each other over these fools that they're in a relationship with. And you see it online. You see the back and forth arguments on social media. You see people have met up, fought, even unalived each other over a man that's going to just move on after y'all are both locked up or passed away. So I'm not just blaming it on the man, but those are some of the tactics that they use. Like, getting in each one of their heads, making it seem like the other person is tripping, downplaying what's really going on, pinning them against each other, pitting them against each other. And sometimes it's just the woman's doing. You know, I've been guilty of it. Like, you find out that this man is dealing with another woman and that's why I'm anti-situationship, because that often happens in situationships more so than relationships, when you are both dealing with this man, but neither one of y'all got really the title, so you can't really trip, but you tripping because you're doing relationship things, and you see the other woman and you start to compare yourself, and you start to jealousy comes up, or you start feeling like, oh, she ain't got nothing on me, or you don't like her and you don't even know her. And I think oftentimes these women that are battling with each other under different circumstances, they probably would be the best of friends. But because this man is the common denominator and y'all have convinced yourself that he's the prize, now all of a sudden you beefing with a whole other woman that both of y'all really need to keep it moving. Because if a man got you online arguing or fighting in the streets, especially at this big grown age, then he don't care about neither one of y'all, for real. And that's interesting how he said he'll keep a couple of women who feel unattractive in their circle to make them feel insecure and start hating the women that they feel are attractive. It's crazy. It is crazy. Vigilante says the best way to channel opposite energy is through your partner. Artificial energy will always be manufactured. Well, we talked about this before, and I get what you're saying, but we all, men and women, both possess masculine and feminine energy within us. So it's not manufactured or artificial. It's within you. So you can forget about the label if you don't feel comfortable calling it feminine energy, which it is. There's so many things that you do that require feminine energy. There are so many things that women do that require masculine energy, and vice versa. It doesn't mean that you are feminine. It doesn't mean that you are masculine. It means that these are things that are labeled, that are titled, that are governed by that type of energy. Creativity is a feminine energy. So anytime that you are creating, you're an influencer, so you have to create content. You have to you express yourself in certain ways. The way you any type of art that you do is creative energy, which is feminine energy. I'm confused how jealousy can come into play for a woman who is the best version of herself. I can't see a woman like that in that situation. It happens. Unfortunately, it happens. Jealousy, yeah, it can come from having some lack of self-worth or self-esteem or whatever, but it can also come from self-doubt. The prettiest women that have themselves all the way together are going to experience some of those negative qualities, which is why I recommend doing shadow work to acknowledge some of the things that you have going on that aren't necessarily deemed a great quality or attribute, like jealousy in the those type of dark energies that people experience. That's where shadow work comes into play. So there's also a category called Rambo. Rambo is aggressive with everybody, not just his partner. He gets a thrill out of the sensation of intimidating people and strives to handle all life situations by subtly or overtly creating fear. He has an exaggerated, stereotypical view of what a man is supposed to be, which goes hand in hand with seeing women as delicate, inferior, and in need of protection. Rambo often comes from a home or neighborhood where he was the target of violence himself and learned that the only way to feel safe is to be stronger, tougher, and less caring than everybody else. He has little patience for weakness, fragility, or indecision. Often he has a criminal record for violence, theft, drunk driving, or drug dealing. Early in a relationship, Rambo is likely to be loving and kind to his partner, like most abusers, because he lacks fear or pretends to. He can make a woman feel safe and protected. This style of abuser can therefore be particularly appealing to a woman who comes from a violent home herself, or to one who is in the process of leaving another abusive relationship. Rambo can make you feel as though his aggressiveness would never be directed toward you because he loves you. He wishes to look after your safety as if you were his daughter. He enjoys the role of protector, feeling like a gallant knight. However, he lacks respect for women, and this disrespect, combined with his general violent tendencies, means that it is only a matter of time before he will be the one you need protection from. Many highly masculine, in quotes, men are not Rambo. The notion that all macho men are likely to abuse women is based largely on class and ethnic prejudices, the same misconceptions that allow Mr. Sensitive or Mr. Right to skate by undetected. There are plenty of tough guys out there who are friendly to everyone and avoid aggressive interactions whenever possible, but enjoy lifting weights, playing rough sports, hunting, and other aspects of stereotypical masculinity. They may be good fighters, but only in self-defense. It isn't macho that women need to watch out for. The danger signs are violence and intimidation toward anyone, and disrespect and superiority toward women. Sometimes Rambo is a psychopath or sociopath, which can make him all the more emotionally abusive and in some cases physically abusive as well. Later, okay, boom. The victim. Life has been hard and unfair for the victim. To hear him tell it, his intelligence has been chronically underestimated. He has been burned by people he trusted, and his good intentions have been misunderstood. The victim appeals to a woman's compassion and desire to feel that she can make a difference in his life. He often tells persuasive and heart-rending stories about how he was abused by his former partner, sometimes adding the tragic element that she is now restricting or preventing his contact with his children. He maneuvers the woman into hating his ex-partner and may succeed in enlisting her in a campaign of harassment, rumor spreading, or battling for custody. This therapist says, as a counselor of abusive men, I have dozens of times been in the position of interviewing a man's former partner and then speaking with the new one. The new partner usually speaks at length what a wicked witch the woman before her was. I can't tell her what I know, much as I wish I could, because of my responsibility to protect the confidentiality and safety of the former partner. All I can say is I always recommend, whenever there are claims of emotional or physical abuse, that women talk to each other directly and not just accept the man's denial. Women sometimes ask me, what if a man I am dating really was victimized by his former girlfriend? How can I tell the difference? Here are some things to watch out for. If you listen carefully, you often can hear the difference between anger toward an ex-partner, which would not be worrisome in itself, and disrespect or contempt, which should raise warning flags. A man who has left a relationship with bitterness should nonetheless be able to talk about the ex-partner as a human being with some understanding of what her side of the conflicts was and some ways he might have contributed to what went wrong. If he speaks in degrading or superior ways about her, or makes everything that went wrong in the relationship her fault, be careful, because it is likely that he was the abusive one. It is very important, ladies, when you're vetting and when you're listening to men, to hear how they speak about their exes. Try to get him to talk about his own conduct and relationship, especially around the time of the breakup. If he blames his own behavior on her, that's a bad sign. Be particularly careful with a man who claims to have been the victim of physical violence by a previous female partner. The great majority of men who make such claims are physical abusers. Ask him for as much detail as you can about the violent incidents, and then try to talk to her or seek out anyone else who would give you a different perspective of what happened. Pay attention to how he talks and thinks about abused women. A genuine male victim tends to feel sympathy for abused women and support their cause. The victim, on the other hand, often says that women exaggerate or fabricate their claims of abuse, or insist that men are abused just as much as women are. We almost done, y'all. We got 2 more archetypes. 2 or 3. 2. So then we have the terrorist. He says, I worked for a few months with an abused woman named Gloria who was wondering how much longer she would be alive. Her husband, Gerald, would glare at her, drum his fingers methodically on the table, and say, you have 6 months left. A whole fool. Things better shape up around here. 6 months. Her head would swim, and her heart would race with fear. And she would plead with him to tell exactly what he planned to do to her at the end of that period. And he would answer with maybe just a hint of a cold smile. Just wait and see. Just wait and see. 6 months, Gloria. Gerald had never laid a hand on Gloria in the 5 years they had been together, but she was terrified. She started working with me on making an escape plan to run away with their 2-year-old son. The terrorist tends to be both highly controlling and extremely demanding. His worst aspect, however, is that he frequently reminds his partner that he could physically rip her to pieces or even unalive her. He doesn't necessarily beat her. However, some abusers know how to terrorize their partners with threats, strange veiled statements, and bizarre behaviors. One of my violent clients cut an article out of the newspaper about a woman who had been murdered by her husband, and he taped it up on the refrigerator. Another man responded to his partner's announcement that she was leaving him by spilling the blood of an animal in front of the house. Another client would take out his gun when he was angry and at his partner, but would insist that he was just going to clean it and that it had nothing to do with her. So y'all know about the couple I think it was 2 weeks ago. It was a black man and a white woman who mysteriously, the man was murdered by the woman, and she claims that she was just cleaning the gun. That sounds familiar. But and it was like 5 o'clock in the morning after they had just came from the club drinking and stuff. But yeah, that terrorist is one of the most scariest forms of abuse, actually, because you don't know if or when they would do this, but they've already set the tone that they can and letting you feel like they will. And so it's like a lingering cloud of the unknown. It's very frightening to have somebody do certain things. I've personally experienced a couple of these things years ago in the abusive relationship that I was in. But by the time it got to that, it was like that was the beginning of the end. Because once you start bringing weapons to the house and saying little things, at that point, I got to snap out of the delusion and be like, okay, this is real. And a lot of times, unfortunately, it takes for a woman or a victim or an abused person to understand that they actually can be unalived, because sometimes you think, oh, they wouldn't do it, they ain't gonna go that far, they've never gone that far. But once you realize, like, oh yeah, he's about that life, then you put a little bit more pep in your step to get out. Rambo is Andrew Tate and Tupac, but the most extreme version of that is Ike Turner. The victim is DDG. Interesting. The terrorist is Kanye West and Dame Dash. Yeah, that's scary. That's scary. That's scary. Now, you said Rambo. Why you say Rambo is Tupac? Because Tupac was aggressive to a lot of people, but I never seen him aggressive to women, though. That burgundy tastes good. For those of you that didn't see me earlier, I'm drinking. Oh, you know what? I'm drinking root beer, and I think somebody said root beer tastes like burgundy, but I think they were talking about Dr. Pepper, actually. So the last one on here is called the mentally ill or addicted abuser. Hi, vibe with _ facial. Is that what it is? I can't hardly see these little words on the screen. Shout out to you speaking on Instagram. So the mentally ill or addicted abuser. The last category is not actually separate from the others. An abusive man of any of the aforementioned styles can also have psychiatric or substance abuse problems, although the majority do not. Even when mental illness or addiction is a fear factor, it is not the cause of a man's abuse of his partner, but it can contribute to the severity of his problem and his resistance to change. When these additional problems are present, it is important to be aware of the following points. Certain mental illnesses can increase the chance that an abuser will be dangerous and use physical violence. These include paranoia, severe depression, delusions or hallucinations, psychosis, obsessive compulsive disorder, and antisocial personality disorder known as psycho, psychopathy, psychopathy or sociopathy. I be wanting to make sure I'm reading these words right, y'all. These psychiatric conditions also make it next to impossible for an abuser to change, at least until the mental illness has been brought under control through therapy and or medication, which can take years. Even if the mental illness is properly treated, his abusiveness won't necessarily change. And notice that all of those diagnoses that I just named, paranoia, severe depression, delusions, hallucinations, psychosis, OCD or obsessive compulsive disorder, antisocial personality disorder. No mention of narcissism. This book was made in 2002, so again, I believe narcissism has become the buzzword of the millennium, us millennials and Gen Zers. Everybody is not a narcissist. Like, I don't know how long narcissism has been an actual diagnosis. I'm sure it's been as long as this book's been out, but wasn't as talked about as it is now. An abuser's reaction to going on or off medication are unpredictable. A woman should take extra precautions for her safety at such a time. Abusers tend to go off medications before long. And before long, I have had few clients who were consistent and responsible about taking their meds in the long term. They don't like the side effects and they are too selfish to care about the implications of the mental illness for their partners or children. The potential danger of a mentally ill abuser has to be assessed by looking at the severity of his psychiatric symptoms in combination with the severity of his abuse characteristics. Looking at his psychiatric symptoms alone can lead to underestimating how dangerous he is. So again, it has to be assessing the severity of his psychiatric symptoms in combination with the severity of his abuse characteristics. Antisocial personality disorder, we got to stop throwing that word out so much too, being antisocial, because that's a whole ass disorder, is present in only a small percentage of abusers, but can be important. Those who suffer from this condition lack a conscious and thus are repeatedly involved in behaviors that are harmful to others. Some signs of this condition include: he started getting into illegal behavior when he was still a teenager. His dishonest or aggressive behavior involves situations unrelated to his partner rather than being restricted to her. He periodically gets into trouble at workplaces and or in other contexts for stealing, threatening, or refusing to follow instructions, and is likely to have a considerable criminal record by about age 30. Though the offenses may be largely minor ones, he is severely and chronically irresponsible in a way that disrupt the lives of others or creates danger. And he tends to cheat on women a lot, turn them against each other, and maintain shallow relationships with them. The psychopath's physical violence is not necessarily severe, contrary to the popular image, but he may be very dangerous nonetheless. Antisocial personality disorder is very difficult to change through therapy, and there is no effective medication for treating it. Sounds similar to narcissism. It is highly compatible with abusiveness toward women. Oh, look at here. We see it now. It has shown up in the book. Those who suffer from narcissistic personality disorder have a highly distorted self-image. They are unable to accept that they might have faults and therefore are unable to imagine how other people perceive them. This condition is highly compatible with abusiveness, though it is present in only a small percentage of abusive men. Clues to the presence of this disorder include your partner's self-centeredness is severe and it carries over into situations that don't involve you. He seems to relate everything back to himself, and he is outraged whenever anyone criticizes him and is incapable of considering that he could ever be anything other than kind and generous. This disorder is highly resistant to therapy and is not treatable with medication. The abuser with this disorder is not able to change substantially through an abuser program either, although he sometimes makes minor improvements. So we have seen narcissistic personality disorder pop up in this book, and he's talked about so much abuse that women have gone through that label all those people narcissists, but he just talked about it in this quick little paragraph. So it does exist, it has been going on, but it's not necessarily as common as we think it is, and it's not present in every abusive man. Many abusers who are not mentally ill want women to think that they are, in order to avoid responsibilities for their attitudes and behaviors. Substance abuse, like mental illness, does not cause partner abuse, but can increase the risk of violence. Like the mentally ill abuser, the addicted abuser doesn't change unless he deals with his addiction, and even that is only the first step. So I encourage any women who want to have a better perspective on why does he do that? Abuse inside the minds of angry and controlling men. Understanding abuse, understanding the signs, understanding how to decipher between each type of man. It talks about the breakups. It talks about, let me just go over some of the chapters in here. Part 1 is the nature of abusive thinking. 4 chapters: the mystery, the mythology, the abusive mentality, the types of abusive men, which is what we just read most of. Part 2 is the abusive man in relationships, how abuse begins, the abusive man in everyday life, abusive men in sex, abusive men in addiction, the abusive man in breaking up. Part 3, the abusive man in the world, abusive men as parents, abusive men and their allies, the abusive man in the legal system. And part 4 is changing the abusive man, the making of an abusive man, the process of change, and creating an abuse-free world. So I highly recommend this because a lot of times women make a lot of excuses as to why they cannot be without this man, why he does it. Oh, he's been through a lot. Oh, he's out of control when he does that. And it's often that he basically kind of goes over a lot of the excuses that women have and kind of brings you back to reality as to why it doesn't make sense. Because one of the things is somebody might say, oh, he was out of control. How was he out of control when he destroyed the house, but he made sure not to touch any of the things that he cares about? He wasn't out of control. Okay, Vigilante says Tupac was a firecracker. He was in a forever battle with himself as a gang member and Black Panther. The ill man is Ryan Garcia, Orlando Brown, Ace Metaphor, and August Alsina. I noticed you said the book talks about women who were abused and not women who ignored intuition, stayed, and became a participant. I can't blame a shark for biting. Again, like I said, if you've never experienced abuse, if you don't want to take the time to research what abuse is and how it can affect people, and you just don't understand it, you don't get it, because some people don't get things that they've never experienced. Some people are not able to empathize or understand or do the research. Now, I ain't gonna say just not able, not interested in doing it. I can't give you the empathy to have towards abusive women or people that have experienced abuse. I'm not going to victim blame, victim shame, or play the game of acting as if abuse doesn't happen, and that, it can happen to anybody. So that's what the book is about. It's about why does he do that? And it helps women to understand exactly what's going on in the minds of these type of men that they're getting with. The back of it says, he says he loves you, so why does he do that? You've asked yourself this question again and again. Now you have the chance to see inside the minds of angry and controlling men and to change your life. In this groundbreaking book, a counselor who specializes in working with abusive men shows you how to improve, survive, or leave an abusive relationship. You will learn about the early warning signs, 10 abusive personality types, the roles of drugs and alcohol, what you can fix and what you can't, and how to get out of a relationship safely. This is without a doubt the most informative and useful book yet written on the subject of abusive men. Women who are armed with the insights found in these pages will be on the road to recovering control of their lives. So if you're looking for a space to ignore that abuse doesn't exist, this is not the space. But it said, Vigilante says, it's the ignoring for me, accountability for me. I don't ever ignore accountability. I've always said that, there are certain things that we have to look at of why we attract certain things in our lives, because you don't attract who you are, you don't attract what you want, you attract who you are. So there's certain things within us that may attract certain experiences in our life. And that's not to blame anybody that has experienced abuse, but there is a lesson or some type of message that you are getting from the type of person that you are attracting. And it might be because of whatever you've been through, or whatever your, bloodline has going on, your ancestral DNA, or whatever it is that's within you that is attracting the same type of person or same type of energy. It could be, and most likely is, something that you need to heal from. You need to do the work on. You need to increase your sense of self-worth. You need to love yourself more. You need to understand that you have a father wound or a mother wound that needs to be healed. So there are multiple things that a person can do in order to equip themselves with the abilities and the strength and the protections to stay away from and repel this type of abusive person. So there is accountability that can be had, but I'm never going to say that anybody deserves to be abused, or that it's their fault that they're abused. I want to see what else that you're saying. Ignoring your intuition. Sometimes you ignore the intuition, and sometimes, again, you don't have the discernment to be able to recognize when it is your intuition and when it's not. So prevention, hello. The goal is for us, a people, to move forward in more healthy relationships, right? Absolutely. So prevention is more effective than removal. If there's not accountability, then we can't do that. Absolutely. I talk every day on the show about healing and doing the work and looking for signs. So a part of talking about the abuse is not just to say, oh, you wait until you've experienced this and then leave. This is about prevention, talking about the signs and being educated on what type of red flags to look out for and what type of personality traits, and being able to identify what is also a part of prevention. So when you're talking about safe sex, a part of safe sex is not just to give somebody a condom or teach them what their options are once they get pregnant or once they have an STI. It's also to educate them on how their body works, educate them on what sex is, how babies are made, soul ties, educate them on the symptoms and the signs of STIs. There's power in education. So a part of that is a part of accountability and a part of recognizing that these are the signs to look out for. These are the signs that will help you. If you see them and label them as red flags, you don't even have to get yourself in a position where you're allowing somebody to get in your head and abuse you any further. Everybody has something to heal from, but you said having nothing to heal from is better. Of course, in a perfect world, but we live in this world, we live on earth. So there's always something to heal from, always something to. That's what's going on. I'm trying to figure out why this charger isn't working. I got the wrong charger plugged in. Everybody coming off as needing healing is a super victim mentality and gives way too much room to be complacent and stuck. The reason why I say everybody needs healing is because we come in this world with some type of trauma. First of all, there is, and healing is not a negative thing. Healing is not something that is like, oh, I'm a victim, I need to heal from everything that I've been through. It's about growing and evolving and acknowledging and recognizing the things that you have experienced or the things that you feel, some of the things that don't even belong to you. So we have not just ourselves when we come into this earth, how we are birthed, how we are carried. We're carried in our mother's womb. We may have experienced some trauma based on the things that she has experienced, based on some things that our maternal grandmothers have experienced, because we were in our maternal grandmother's womb as well. When our grandmothers were pregnant with our mothers had all the eggs that they would ever have in their life within them. So our grandmothers, our maternal grandmothers carried us as well. So anything that they've been through, anything that they've experienced, any trauma that they've had automatically is going to your DNA. Anything your father has experienced, his sperm carries all of that energy and experience and traumas in his DNA that comes through his sperm. So all of that is creating you. And then you have a whole lineage of ancestors and ancestral DNA and epigenetics that are also within you. There's research that shows that we are, as descendants of enslaved people, those of us who are carrying some of the energy and pain and trauma from slavery days. So there's all type of things that are within us that may not that we don't even have to necessarily have experience in our own lives to be affected by. And then you have things like whatever you've gone through in your childhood. Even if you've had the most perfect childhood, everybody looks at certain things differently. Some people were abused and neglected. Some people maybe just didn't get as much attention as their sibling and felt a way about that. Some people were bullied. Some people were so privileged that they were green when they got to the real world and they were culture shocked. There's so many different aspects of experiences that people have had that may cause them to feel like they've experienced some childhood trauma or some issues. Then you have relationships. You have things that you've gone through in relationships that you may have not overcame. People have experienced grief, losing people, losing certain situations, having to adjust and adapt to changes and shifts in their lives. There's so many things that we go through as human beings that having some type of support, healing, therapeutic experience is helpful. So it's not necessarily a negative thing. Healing is not negative, but using healing in a hallmark fortune cookie affirmation way gives people too much room to ignore God and seek man for guidance that leads to the hurt. You know, God is capitalized. I'm a member of the Mende tribe and Igbo tribe, so trust me, I understand. I speak in a European English language as a Black man, so I get it. I'm moving back to Africa in 2 years, so I get that part. Okay, so I don't know what the hallmark fortune cookie affirmation way you're referring to, but again, everyone can benefit from some type of healing, some type of therapeutic experience, and it's not to negate the fact that there are things that you can do as much as you do to prevent and prepare yourself to avoid being in an abusive situation. Sometimes it just freaking happens. So it's not necessarily, it's the same way that I say that I'm very selective in choosing whoever I'm going to be with and have children with. And I have a certain vetting process. I'm being patient. I'm waiting. I'm making sure that my values align with theirs and all of these things that I'm trying to go through in order to get the best parent for my future children. But even with all of that preparing, vetting, and waiting, there's a chance that that man can change or shift or not be who I think he was when I decided to have a child with him after I have a child. That's a lot of women's experience where they're like, I did my best. I chose better. I waited till I got married, and this was still the results. So again, no matter how much accountability you take, no matter how much you do to prepare and to know the signs, you can still mess around and end up with a man who has abusive tendencies. And depending on the circumstances, it may take you a while to break free of that. So again, I'm never going to victim blame or shame. I give people tools all the time to be able to recognize and do the work to prevent as best they can from dealing with certain things, to overcome and unpack what it is that they have to unpack to continue to stop continuing to drag the baggage from one relationship to the next, from childhood to present, all of those things. So if you or someone you know would like to book a session to be able to unpack some of these things and to be able to recognize certain signs, whether that's with healing, self-love, self-discovery, or on your journey of intentional dating, feel free to visit oshacerese.com. You can book a discovery session there. It's absolutely free. You can also enroll in One Single Step at a Time, which is a guided workshop. It is 6 weeks. It's all about healing, unpacking, getting to know yourself. And I did want to address something else you said, and I'll get back to you in a second. It comes with coaching as well, and it comes with the How to Beat Single guided journal. And then if you want to just do your own work on your own, you don't need a guidance and coaching right now, you can always just grab your journal. There's also 5 ways in 5 days, which is a quick 5. You can do it in as little as 5 days, or you can take as many as 60 days, utilizing your love languages into your daily acts of self-love and self-care, and also to uncover any blockages you may have with giving and receiving love. And speaking of love, if you are a hopeful romantic, a single who is intentionally dating, and you're looking for love in 2025, please add yourself to the Intentional Love Collective. It's linked in my bio. It's a growing community and database allowing me to curate personalized dating experiences with your preferences, desires, and values in mind. The Intentional Love Collective is linked in my bio, and then you can go to oshacerese.com for all my other services. Also, if you're a creative, business owner, influencer, or you have some ideas that you want to monetize or utilize and you just don't know where to start, we can get a strategy call. There's a section on our website called Content Strategy. If you already have the idea, just book a strategy session. We'll get you together, whether that's with a content plan, some digital courses, digital ebooks, or just getting you started with your niche. So book that. And also, again, if you're unsure of where to start, just book a discovery call. So I also wanted to address the fact that you said telling people, let me see, I just want to read it. The Hallmark fortune cookie affirmation way gives people too much room to ignore God and seek man for guidance that leads to the hurt. Never should you ever ignore God or ignore whatever your spiritual practices are. That's always supposed to be number one, to be grounded in your faith and your spirituality. But God also gave certain people gifts on this earth to be able to support other people. So that's why we have doctors. That's why we have counselors, coaches, therapists, healers. I said coaches. That's why we have people with certain specialties that have been given the gift to be able to support people on this earth right now. And every person that you go to when it comes to healing, coaching, counseling, they should always be leading you back to self. And leading you back to self is also leading you back to source. So whatever it is that you do for your spiritual practices, to stay grounded, to stay connected, to stay covered in prayer and grounded in your faith and rooted in your faith, that should always be something that is included with your healing. So it's not for nobody can heal you. People can only lead you back to yourself and give you tools and guidance and support on your journey. So don't ever think that I'm saying you can come to me to be healed, because I'm going to always lead you back to yourself with tools, guidance, and support. And Vigilante says marriage is not more prevalent than single momhood. So not most women do not do their best. The African woman hands have always been healing for the community since the start of time. Okay. So again, marriage cannot prevent a man from walking out, and it cannot prevent someone from not being the same person that you thought they were. It is always an option. And I choose to personally wait until marriage to give somebody a child. Maybe I might change my mind. Who knows? You never know. I'm not saying never. But I would prefer to be married before I give somebody a child. But it's still not 100% proof. So I wouldn't say that that is a foolproof way to ensure that you're always going to have a active and present father in your children's lives. But that is the goal. And yes, there are healers, there are people, but they have that gift from God. So yes, I see you. So anyway, thank you all for tuning in. I appreciate the dialogue. Again, I wanted to address the fact that, is narcissism as prevalent as we think it is, or is it just a buzzword? And I think that it's definitely prevalent. I think that people have experienced, not the thumbs down. I think that people have experienced people who have and exhibit narcissistic traits, narcissistic characteristics, but the actual diagnosis of narcissistic personality disorder cannot just be tossed around. Just like I read antisocial personality disorder, and a lot of people say, oh, I'm antisocial. You might want to go read the definition. You might want to go look into that, because it's not as cutesy as it sounds. So it's definitely a thing. Gaslighting, love bombing, trauma bonding, all of these things actually occur, but that doesn't mean that everybody is dealing with the same thing. So it's important to know what it is that you're dealing with out here. Men and women can be abusive. Men and women can both exhibit certain narcissistic traits or characteristics or certain things that I listed earlier today from this book, and not necessarily be abusive. Like somebody that, thinks they're right all the time, or thinks that they are, they want all the attention and stuff. You got to see what level are they exhibiting these behaviors? How is it affecting other people? How do they behave when they don't get their way, or when they're challenged when it comes to them being right? So it's a whole thing out here, y'all. You got to be careful. You have to do your due diligence. You need to do your due diligence to get to know yourself and who you are, what you want, and what to look out for. And that's why I recommend my journal, my guided journal, How to Beat Single, because there are a lot of tools in here that provide you space to be able to write down and do the exercises and the work to figure out who you are, what you want, and what to look out for. There is a section in there for recognizing red flags. There's a section in there for your deal breakers and your non-negotiables as well. So I appreciate y'all so much. I thank you. I appreciate you. Make sure that you are subscribed to the channel. We've gone way over time. I was actually going to talk about another topic, but we will talk about that tomorrow. So we went a little over the time that I thought we were going to take. Let me give y'all some journaling prompts too before we leave. Number one is, what patterns do you notice in your past relationships? So as we're talking about what type of people you are attracting and why. That is a good exercise to write down to figure out why it is that you're attracting people with these same characteristics. So, what patterns do you notice in your past relationships? What boundaries are you setting to avoid toxic relationship dynamics? What boundaries are you setting to avoid toxic relationship dynamics? And the third question or journaling prompt for you is, are you truly ready to date with intention, or are there wounds that still need healing? Are you truly ready to date with intention, or are there rules that or wounds, that still need healing? So, those are your journaling prompts. I think those are great exercises to start on, to work on what are you attracting, what are you accepting, and are you actually ready to get out here in these dating streets? Thank you all for tuning in. This was episode 34, and I hope you all are having a wonderful and amazing night. And I will see y'all tomorrow. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for the dialogue, Vigilante. Thank you for the other people who are tuning in live here on YouTube and Instagram. And I will see y'all tomorrow. Stay tuned. Make sure you subscribe and turn on your notifications.